You're listening to Hayes Radio Network, Cannabis Lifestyle Radio.
All right. Welcome to yet another episode of Cure to Consumption. I am your host, Lance Lambert, and we have next to me Miss Mia Jane.
Hello, hello. Happy to be here.
Man, I can't believe we are spoiled in Southern California. As much as I complain about everything else, it always comes back to the weather, right? That's everyone's excuse for everything. It's expensive, it's overcrowded, it's overtaxed, but this weather, my gosh.
It's snowing everywhere else. So, this is the time of year when I don't really mind the exorbitant cost of living because it's just so pleasant every single day, it seems.
I know. It's crazy. It's crazy. Cool. We'll get right into it. We are going to have a guest joining us in a few minutes, but thought I'd kick off the show. One thing that we always talk about and figured I'd bring to the table is, what you're currently consuming, because both of us are connoisseurs, not canna snobs. We're connoisseurs. There's a difference.
Depends on who you ask, I guess.
Right. So, I'm curious, because you always bring something fun.
I've always got, different cannabis goodies. Today I've got some kief-covered blunts from Nugs, I think it is, and it's some London pound cake. So.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. I've got an ashtray over here too.
Oh, okay, you're good.
You. What about you? What are you smoking on? I see a pretty cool vaporizer device.
Yeah. This is a dryer vape. We don't technically have sponsors yet, so I'll withhold from specifics. But it is kind of, it's almost like the Apple phone of vapes,
okay.
And takes about a half gram, so it's a little bit smaller than my other one. But yeah, I'm on right now. Gosh, I actually had to write down. This one is Charlie Girl from Soul Spirit Farms up from Norgal. So
nice. Love
those organic farms. Definitely shout out to those guys because they are doing some magic up there. And some crazy stuff in the news too. I figured we'd talk. I mean, this is just kind of topical. We like to touch on a little bit more of the evergreen or the stuff that's more common as far as impact. But a couple of things popped up in the news. And I figured a few we had covered, like Idaho. I hate to pick on them, but I think we've talked about this before, Mia. It's funny because that state is surrounded by legalization, right? You've got Washington State, Oregon State, you've got Nevada, you've got Utah, Montana, Wyoming is, so 6 out of 7 of those are legal on some level, medical, adult use, or both. And not to forget, north of the border above Coeur d'Alene, you've got Canada. Calgary's just north, right?
Yep, legal weed every which way you look except for in Idaho.
Yes, and they went as far recently to actually update their constitution to make cannabis illegal. So they're trying to get ahead of the inevitable, which I keep forecasting for the last few years. I've been saying 2022. I still believe in it, but trying to get ahead of federal legalization by suppressing as much as possible. Is this not crazy? Right now?
It's crazy, but not surprising. And, I think the Republicans are the majority in that state. And it's only passed the Senate, not the House.
That is true. You're right.
It still has to be approved by the voters. So I think they're just trying to beat everyone to the punch because everyone knows that, I'm sure there's a lot of cannabis in Idaho, whether or not they like that or not. And it's only a matter of time unless they try to beat everyone to it. So, but
it's true.
If it becomes federally legal, then I don't know that they'll have much they can do about it at that point, at least not with a big fight from voters.
Yeah, that's right. And that's one thing. It's almost kind of a contingency to this move, which does make you wonder if it's all for naught or sorting chairs on the Titanic, as they say. Because to your point, they are acknowledging what legalization levels exist at a federal level for cannabis and hemp. So, I mean, at the end of the day, I agree with you. And you're right. There's some phenomenal individuals like 420 Mom up there that have been very much trying to get the movement going forward. I was following one group. I was supporting them a little bit too, that did a tour of the entire state to get signatures for moving something forward. So, and I have to admit, I've got friends from there. I was up there, I want to say just before Christmas last year. And of all people I was hanging out with, there was a DA at the party I was at that is not with specifically with Boise, but with a neighboring town on the border of both Idaho and Oregon. And he admitted, he said, a lot of the cases that come in, he throws them out because they're so trivial. It's minute possession. It's, way below an ounce in most cases. So yeah, I'd say with you, there's definitely still support. And when we see the national average, depending on which survey or poll you're looking at, but anywhere from 66% conservatively on adult use legalization to up as high as 75, 76% for some level of federal legalization. So 3 out of 4 people are saying, come on, so
people want the weed.
They do.
It's no secret. So.
Yes, it is very true. It is very true. The other thing that kind of popped up that I thought was pretty interesting was the increase. And again, this is a little bit more in your wheelhouse because admittedly I'm a microdoser, I'm a low doser, but a 40% increase in sales of concentrates. So
I did see that. That is pretty interesting, but it could just have something to do with the fact that there's a lot of forms considered concentrates
right?
At this point. I'm like, it's everything from hash to keef to rosin to moon rocks. Like, there's a lot of stuff in between there. So I kind of
oil
think
included, right?
They might have blurred the lines a little bit. I kind of feel like it's gotten more common with people. I don't think dab rigs specifically are something that's gotten any more normal for the majority of the consumers out there, but I think that access to a variety of different concentrates is something that has grown in the market, and I think that's pretty cool to watch. So, but we still need a lot of education out there.
We do. It always comes back to concentration, and it's funny you mentioned the dab rig because this was an article from Green Entrepreneur. Props to those guys; they're doing great stuff as far as educating. To your point, they were saying that, interesting enough, that education has been a factor to your point, at least specifically to the dabbing. But you're right, Absolutely. There's other elements like oil. And of course, we fought, both of us being out of SoCal, we saw firsthand the vape gate, as they called it, and the honey, the whole,
That was only a matter of time.
It was, right? It wasn't ironic. It was so ironic that it wasn't the oil itself, it was the mechanism in which it was consumed. In some instances, in other instances, it was the additives that were introduced into the oil. But at the end of the day, it wasn't the cannabis. It wasn't the cannabis that was driving that. So anyway, but yeah, they did point out to your reference on dabbing that more education came around that, more comfort. A lot of people that just didn't want to consume flower and consumed it in some other fashion. I mean, myself, I shifted in light of the pandemic more to, to edibles and even just elixirs, transdermals, like all different types of stuff I use. But I think about that, and to your point, it's all concentrate, because if it goes through CO2, short path, or BHO, or even alcohol, you are obviously converting that flower biomass into a concentrate.
Exactly. Yeah.
So
concentrates
you're right,
are very common. Yeah. And some people don't even realize that I'm kind of skeptical on whether or not using a vape pen is dabbing, but I guess technically it is dabbing. But, there's a lot of vape pens out there and a lot of portable e-rigs and all sorts of stuff. And I think that people are just getting more comfortable with exploring those. And, I think it's exciting, but, we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I think it's all a matter of time. We'll see what comes into fruition, and definitely go from there. So yeah, let's talk a little bit though about our guest that's going to be joining us just now.
Yeah, so Danielle is someone that I met, I don't know, a couple of years ago in Denver. I forget where exactly, probably out at one of like the Cannabis Patients Days or something like that. She's always been super active in the community, very outgoing, super upbeat. She is originally from, I believe, Colombia, but she is about to hop on. Her screen name or her Instagram is Cannalatino, so make sure you guys check her out. She's a great educator in the cannabis space for the Spanish-speaking community, and I'm really excited to have her on today. So,
Awesome. Perfect.
Okay, yeah, for sure.
Sounds like she's going to be calling just now. And that's a very important point. I mean, that's one thing we always mention to the listeners, that first and foremost, education. That's something that's quite pivotal, both for me and myself, when it comes to interacting with anyone, whether it be in the industry or mainstream or even family and friends. So it's definitely one of those things where it's a factor in the individuals that we interview and that we bring on the show and support. And even more so for this, and this is one thing that Mia mentioned, for Danielle to have a focus on the Latino community, which is a huge factor. I mean, That's
I mean, unfortunately, I am not Spanish speaking, even though it's something that would probably be very beneficial. So I think that. Hello, Danielle. How
and there
are
she
you?
is.
This is Mia Jane.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming on the show today. You're here with Lance and I on Cure to Consumption podcast. So thank you for joining us.
Yay! So happy.
Yes, thanks again. And we were just talking about the individuals that we love having on the show, those that obviously, put their best foot forward from an educational standpoint. And that's what we were just catching up on, is not only your emphasis on education, but also emphasis on education as it ties into the Latino community, because, that's a factor. So much of this education, always focuses on that ESL, or, as English is a primary language versus English as a second language. And if you could just kind of tell us a little bit about you and about your background and what got you to where you are and how you're supporting the industry in that way.
Oh, yes, for sure. Well, I'm originally from Venezuela, beautiful country in the Caribbean.
Yes.
And I am, of course, I'm an immigrant, and I live here in Colorado now. I'm blessed enough that I have the opportunity to have another place to go when my country went to a different direction than their nice one. So I moved first to Miami, here in the United States, like a lot of Venezuelan. and there we start having some healthy issues with my kid, with my boy, my first son. And then we were kind of like, try all type of medication. We try all type of therapy. He was diagnosed with autism when he was 7. And I was diagnosed with autism when I was 28.
Oh, my gosh. Times have changed, right?
Exactly. So pretty much on his appointment, the neurologist told me that I was also part of the package. And it seems logical because I'm the mom. So, yeah.
Yeah.
Like they never go far from who we are. So we didn't have a great experience with the regular medications in Florida, and we decided to move to Colorado. Not for the cannabis. We decided to move to look for, like a calmer place, or, the mountains. We wanted to do different activities and different therapies on that time. He used to love the rock climb, and that was one of his therapies that it works better. So in Florida, we don't have any mountains.
Yeah, not many mountains or corners in the roads or turns in the roads, rather in Florida.
Right.
Pretty flat and straight, right?
So when we moved here, we discovered cannabis as a medication, and it really saved our life. Actually, a doctor, when I was in a hospital in an emergency, he told me I was totally passed out, kind of like in the place that you're not here, not there.
Oh, wow.
And a doctor came to me, and they were giving me by that time Percocet and Benadryl directly to my vein for pain, for migraines. I also have fibromyalgia.
Wow.
So you can imagine the amount of drugs that I was already on for medical reasons.
Yeah.
Or never buy anything in the street.
although the lines are blurred, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Jeez.
So this doctor came to me and told me, you live in a state where cannabis is legal. Please look for help because we are killing you.
Wow.
Gosh.
Yeah, the next day I was in a cannabis doctor. I was lucky enough to live again in a state and in a country where cannabis is legal for medical reasons. And I had a great experience with this doctor. It was super knowledgeable. And then, of course, I bring my kid.
Wow.
And that's how it started. I started posting everything on my Instagram and my Facebook account. And my background is communication.
Oh, okay.
So,
nice.
Yes, I've been a creative director and a communicator my whole life. I used to have a magazine and a TV show in Miami.
Yeah, you've
as well.
I remember you telling me some of the stuff you used to do before you moved to Colorado, and it just seemed like you could do a little bit of everything. So, I was so happy to have you as a part of the community there in Denver. So you're definitely a very well-spoken individual, for sure.
Thank you. No, it was a pleasure. It was a pleasure to have also all the community because, again, I was an immigrant. I was alone and in the middle of all this and talking about marijuana, like what?
Well, and when was this? That's a big factor. And you already know, obviously, Mia's lived out there. I've lived out there myself for years. And so we're both fans of Colorado. When was this that you made the move from Miami? What year do you recall?
2013.
Oh my God!
Yes.
That's what I was going to guess because I went out there for the industry January of 2014, and that's when the movement, although they did have medical legalization before adult use legalization, but it seems like things really got attention. In your story, this is so unique. The company I worked for is the Cannabis out there, and we were a news site, and we were covering these stories of families literally selling everything they owned and moving from, to your point, states where it's not like Texas, a lot of them from Texas and Alabama, Oklahoma from the southeast. And they were moving there to help their children with issues like grand mal seizures, epileptic seizures, neurological disorders that they're finding, to your point, cannabis actually helps versus hurts the body like some of the pharmaceuticals. So it's so interesting. You were kind of a part of a migration of families that were trying to find better quality life that ended up finding it in cannabis there. So
totally. I
cool.
am part of that migration. I think I'm blessed that I was, that I ended up in the right state. And I was also able to, because like you said, it was medicinal on this state, but as the next year after I moved, they legalized also the adult consumption.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, but we also have a legalization of a lot of conditions as well with that. Mm-hmm. And one of them was autism.
Yep.
I had the pleasure to testify on that law so it can pass because my kid get into the register as a patient. He get registered as a patient because he also had my migraines.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay.
That's awesome.
So he was able to get into
it,
the system because of that.
Well, and something bigger that's tied to those rules and regulations associated with the medical side. And that's what I loved about Colorado compared to Washington State, where to your point, they didn't just, now we're doing adult use, so you got what you wanted. We won't have this, in-depth medical program. Colorado acknowledged church and state, and they still keep it as such, even at the dispensary level. But one thing I found interesting was how they had passed in allowing individuals like your son to be able to actually consume their medication at school, which it seems obvious to a lot, like to me, for children, like we have family friends that are dealing with autism and some other disorders where they need to take these medications throughout the day in order to stay level. And they allow the pharmaceutical side, bring whatever, pill bottle it is. But why would that not be applicable to cannabis? And I thought that was really cool of Colorado to address that. I don't want to call it an issue because it's not. They allow other medicines. Why not this?
It's a right. I actually sat in on a lot of those testimonies. I was there at the Capitol during those times, and it was
crazy.
It was intense.
I know. I had a picture with you.
Yes, we were there. Like we were there
so
for
cool.
a lot of these things that happened at the Capitol in Denver, and it was such an exciting time. And that's why I really think it's important, to get out there and make sure you have a voice and go out and testify at, your local, city council or Capitol, issues and things like that. Just like you did, Danielle, like that stuff really matters and it does make a change. So thank you for having a part in that. And I'm so glad that you and your son were able to get, something that actually helps a little bit, it sounds like. So
I am more than honored that being able to be part of that because it's like you said, Jack's Law, for example. Jack was a kid that we all know.
Yeah.
We all knew that kid. He was part of the community, and her mother was arrested because he was consuming cannabis. And we have kids that we send it to school with methamphetamines.
Yeah.
Since they're 7, we don't think about that. We think only what we are taught to think, and that is why I have to start with all this education side because, again, I start posting on when our pictures together in the, this event, and how we were fighting for a better legalization for kids and for people, our neighbors. It's just logical to want a better quality of life for the people that you have close. That's what makes us a community. So I start posting, like all these pictures and telling people what I was doing and how cannabis really changed my life in my kid's life. Because after 6 months he was on cannabis for his migraines, he told me I had a click. Like my brain did click, and I talked to him, and he was already another kid. He was out of the old methamphetamines, like Adderall, Ritalin, all these stimulants that we give to kids. We have to think about that too.
So many.
And he was able to consume a medication that is non-lethal. So as a mother, you don't know how amazing that feels. And especially because also your kid is telling you, I'm feeling better. I'm getting it now.
Yeah.
That is cool. It's very cool because you're right. They and I understand under certain circumstances, like there's a campaign in Northern California here when you're coming out of, the Emerald Triangle up in Northern California, a sign that says, still it's for adult use, and because it can alter. Like, I understand where people are coming from a whole, shouldn't consume it until the body is fully developed. But on the flip side, this is where it's a total exception to me.
Yeah.
It totally makes sense because the studies that they're doing around the world, but again, I always go back to Israel because I was so impressed when I visit there in Tel Aviv, some of the things they're doing. But they are finding that, exactly to your point, Danielle, this is something that we all have endocannabinoid systems. We all have the receptors to be able to process this medicine. And talking to a scientist, he's actually a chemist that was speaking at a hemp. They had so many events in Colorado back in the day. You guys remember this? There was a hemp group that they'd have a monthly meeting over in Cherry Creek. And he took on a challenge, and this is kind of close to home for me. It was about cancer, where there's a pill that one of the big pharmas charges. It's $50 a pill.
Yikes.
And their goal was to see if they could mimic the attributes of that medicine naturally with cannabis for less than $5. And they actually got it almost as low as 50 cents as far as equivalent in dosage and outcome. And I was so impressed with that. And he said, yeah, it just makes sense. He's all, let me explain. He's also, a lot of people use ibuprofen, and Danielle, I'm sure you, especially with migraines, a lot of people turn to Tylenol or turn to Advil. And specifically with ibuprofen, he said, the reason why you can consume 800 milligrams a day is because the uptake or the lack thereof. He said the absorption rate on average for pharmaceutical-based painkillers is about 50%. And so you're only absorbing half of that 800 milligrams. So it's like you're only taking 4 doses at most versus the 8.
Yeah.
But you're paying for twice.
Yes, you're paying. Yes, that's exactly. And we have our opinions of big pharma. My gosh, right? But that was a thing that he pointed out, was that with this, it's 100% absorption. What the body doesn't need or doesn't use, it'll flush through, similar to most vitamins and supplements that we consume as individuals. So I agree with you, Danielle. I mean, that's one thing for him to come back and tell you how he feels, right? Because it's tough as a parent to go in and meet with the pediatrician or with the specialist of your physician's office to talk about autism or those issues, right? And they're saying, oh, well, there's this pink pill, then this blue pill, there's this smaller pill. We can start them at 10 milligrams and then let's try 20 milligrams. And all of a sudden, to your point, the child is so pumped up on pharmaceuticals that they don't know what feels normal, what doesn't feel normal, what feels right, what doesn't feel right. It's so great to hear, for him to be able to make that shift versus being one of these children, not to pick on the Z gen, but they're the younger. Everyone thinks of the millennials. The millennials are now the Gen Xers. The next gen to Gen Xers, the Y gen, are the ones that we talk about now even more so. But they're the ones who are graduating college. And to your point, like you said, they've been on these drugs for 15, 20 years of their life. It's incredible, and it's a path that I don't wish on anyone.
Exactly. And the worst part is that, first of all, for me it was magical because the reason why I moved was because my son also stand in front of me when I was giving him his medication. And he was fighting against me. He was like, I'm not going to take it. I'm not going to take it. I'm not going to take it. And by that time, I even have the social services and all the system like on top of me because he turned suicidal when he was 13.
Oh, wow.
Oh, man.
So that changed the whole thing.
Yeah.
That means that you need to medicate the kid, or they will remove the kid and will put it in a hospital and who knows?
Scary.
Else they give him.
Yep.
So I was kind of fighting with him and telling him, no, you need to take it, like how it is, how mamas are, how we are.
You mean always right?
We're always right, of course.
Total stop, yeah, we get it.
Exactly. Well, he stand in front of me and he told me, I cannot take this pill. And I was like, why? And he told me, they removed my ability to love.
Oh.
And that's when I moved to Florida, from Florida to any other state who doesn't have that social system on top of me. So I cannot medicate my kid anymore. I was totally looking for something else. And so when he said that he was clicking on him, that this medication, that this plant, like you say right now, we all have an endocannabinoid system. And I'm not preaching for kids, go take cannabis. Nothing further than that, I'm just wanted to bring the attention to the fact that we have a system that it goes with this plant. And even better, we produce cannabinoids exactly the same as THC.
Yep.
So we have to stop panicking.
Yes.
Very true.
Because every time we do exercise, every time we have an orgasm, every time we're happy, we have that endocannabinoid involved in our life.
That's true.
So we really shouldn't be ashamed or, we shouldn't be prohibited something that we produce that is natural.
Yeah.
It's like to try to illegalize gravity.
And that's a sad thing. And I think it might be a good segue to get into, because being from Venezuela and coming over to the States, and I know everyone, the U.S., it's, the free country, the safest, the best, the this, the that, the richest, and we're not perfect. That's being a traveler internationally and having been all around the world from South America to Pan-Pacific and Europe. There are other benefits of other places, but that is what's sad, because what you're talking about, albeit started kind of a Western mentality, but weaponizing this plant. I mean, that's exactly it. What they did to it from a political standpoint, and what they did from suppressing minority groups specifically in this country, and primarily Hispanic and African American, but to a certain extent Asian American. It's just so it's so sad, because I think about how many lives, and again, myself being a cancer survivor, Danielle, what you and your son have been through, even what Mia's been through in her health and how it helps her. Like, imagine how many more lives it would have affected if we weren't in prohibition for 100 years. That's just, I don't know. It baffles me. I mean, someone posted up something on LinkedIn, and it was the effect of talking about, what if they never lifted prohibition of alcohol and never started prohibition of cannabis? And I said, being a tow truck driver for years, you guys can imagine, I saw a lot of bad accidents, and a lot of them were related to alcohol. And I said, the amount of lives that would be saved and the amount of lives that would be healed if the shoe was on the other foot. If cannabis, to your point, was as cool as alcohol. I mean, I still am baffled by how much alcohol plays into our social web, if you will, not just here, but internationally. So.
Oh, totally. And we know that alcohol gives you cancer and can cause cancer, but we don't take it out. We know that cigarettes can do it. And if I don't recall well, on the Nixon campaign, he's against cannabis. He says, I want to punch marijuana in the vagina. So
wouldn't put it past that guy.
You see how many things wrong was with that statement.
So much wrong. But it also says a lot to where we are now. So
It does. And that was, I mean, there's 3 points that Salinger, I think of way back when, that started the original war on drugs, or reefer madness. To your point, and this is so interesting, Danielle, like you get this. You probably know more than a lot of people have been here their whole lives, but you're spot on. Nixon started the real modern war on drugs. And then I think Daryl Gates just exasperated it in the 80s with the DARE program and Nancy Reagan jumping on that bandwagon. But it's so true, like how asinine. And you read some of the quotes from both the 30s during Prohibition and the 70s, and I would believe anything that anyone told me as far as quotes go for how they treated this playground back then. I don't think I'd argue with any of them, on the facts. So it is crazy. But
no. But again, it was a crazy era. Mm-hmm. It was, and I think right now we are not looking for who to blame. We are looking for the solution.
Yes.
And we have the opportunity. We have the media. We have the tools today. Like I said before, I just started posting my cannabis journey in my Facebook page. Then I ended up into not having more space to accept friends, and people was writing me, like sending me all the type of message, especially the Latino community, because we really don't know anything about it. So I create Cannalatino, which is a blog, a community, and the first school of cannabis in Spanish in the United States. We actually had the trademark last year for that.
Nice.
Congratulations. That's always the easiest process.
Yeah. That's so cool. I know you were doing so much with it, and I think that you've come a long way, and it's a really important part of the cannabis community. So I applaud you for everything you've been up to. It's a lot.
Thank you. But again, telling you how small is our knowledge and how sad it is that no one else was talking about this.
Yeah.
I also write the first cannabis cooking book in Spanish.
Oh, cool.
Where I have recipes for Latino food,
Oh, and she is an amazing cook, this woman. I've been to brunch at her house, and it is incredible. Everything was amazing.
Oh, my gosh.
So good.
Next time I'm in Colorado, I'm telling you, I had a neighbor. She is from Guadalajara. She taught me how to make the proper huevos rancheros. And now I can't even go out to eat, and I can only make my own. It's like something about authentic.
Nice.
Don't worry. I will make arepas for you.
Oh, my gosh.
So good.
Dreamy. That's very cool.
Exactly. So I just started, communicating, writing. Again, my background is communication. So for me, it was easy because that's what I used to do. I have contact with Telemundo, with Univision, with different, like CBS, with a lot of people, because I was working on media before. So they were my friends, and they were like, hey, what are you doing? Through my Facebook, they were watching like, what is this? How do you know about that? Let's make a news about it. Do you know about this? Do you know about that? And then I start doing pretty much a lot of news, a lot of things, like I went public. I mean,
you came out of the green closet, as we say.
Yeah.
That's what I love saying. I'm like, I've been out of the green closet for years now.
Totally. That's exactly how I say it. Everybody looks at me like I'm crazy, but I totally feel that I came out of my closet. I'm a green closet. And now I have only plants on my closet because I grow in the indoor.
Love it.
Yes.
The perpetual grower. That's great.
Of course.
Nice.
So I think I'm blessed that not just moved here to the United States, but also being able to give back to my Latino community, because I'm not just from Venezuela. My dad is from Argentina.
Oh, wow.
I have family from Spain. I live in Peru. We have to, I traveled the whole Latin America from Venezuela to Argentina in a car with my sister, my mom, and my dad. We almost kill each other, but
and that's not a short trip for those that don't know besides the fact that people don't know that there's over 700 million people in South America and the islands, but it is a big continent.
No small
That's a drive.
space.
No, just from the tip up to Colombia, that'd take a week.
Yeah,
exactly. And we also have, again, my family from Spain, from Italy, so I have a real Latin culture.
Yes.
Like a lot of people that I have to teach, and that I have to. I love that. I love that. I was reading the other day something that I love, and it's, if you want to learn, teach, because you really learn from other people the necessity, the needs that they have, and being
true.
a person that it can be, with like you, that with the doctors in Israel, I was able to meet Dr. Limerihanus, Dr. Rafael Mechulan, and also Cristina Sanchez from La Complutense in Spain, who was the one who had the theory. Well, it's not a theory; it's a fact. The cancer cells suicide or turn off the nucleus in the presence of THC or anandamide.
Mm-hmm.
So those are people that are doing research that you blow your mind.
Oh yeah,
and they're really on this every day, not with the fear of what are we gonna do the research or let's do a research that is only allowed. No, these are people that are really fighting for the best way to live in this planet and to get a better quality of life. Those are my heroes.
No, I agree.
Of course.
I agree.
Those are some good ones. I'd say they're doing some really important work for everybody's good, in my opinion. So.
Yeah. And they have the freedom, to your point. That's one thing that it is unfortunate here. And I mean, I just posted some up, I think, last week about GW Pharmaceuticals selling out to another big pharma, as if there could be bigger. And the crazy part, there was an article that spun off of that about why the government is in love with only England's solutions in big pharma by way of cannabis, because that's the thing is GW, they out of a half dozen that use cannabinoids, they're the only ones that use biomass or natural cannabinoids versus synthetic cannabinoids. And it again, it's one of those things where, to your point, we aren't able to do those studies. So that's where I get where they're coming from. Like, well, we would be the leader, but because this drug has been suppressed and given a status of illicit, not just illicit, but Schedule I, which is ridiculous.
Exactly. And that's another thing, like a lot of people is, oh, yeah, Jazz Pharmaceutical bought GW Pharma for $7.2 billion.
Billion with a B.
Way.
Yes. With a B. Huge.
They were pioneers. I bet the first scientist from GW Pharma who says, what about if we try cannabis? He was like, really? Everybody was like, no, are we? Are you crazy? But they did it. They believe in him. They believe in cannabis. And it's not the right one, let me tell you. It's not the one that we have to use because I believe in the entourage effect. I believe in the whole plant.
100%.
But
100%.
It's a big step, that we can make the heads of these huge pharmaceuticals, of this huge money to see this. What do we have to do right now is have enough education to not allow anyone else here to take out our right to also grow our own.
Yeah, because that's a big debate, right? Every state that comes on, that's the first thing that comes up. I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, now it is interesting. Some are a half dozen, some are a dozen, but some still do not allow.
It kind of seems like most don't have home grow rights.
Yeah.
It's pretty rare considering all the states that have some type of medical or adult use cannabis. It's one reason I don't feel like I can move home to Florida because I really want to, be able to have a couple of my own.
We won't want you to move home there anyways.
But so nice.
It is.
I got to spend like half the year here and half the year in Florida. So.
Oh, yeah, because you'd be here, let me see, you'd be in California during the tropical storm season because, gosh, they've gone into the Greek alphabet twice in the last decade. So you wouldn't be in Florida for the hurricane season. But the rest of the year.
No,
I feel like
want to be there for hurricane season.
No.
Florida's got some fun stuff coming up in the next few years, and I feel like if they go, legal with adult use, it might be a good place to be. So.
And they will. It's interesting. It's a tangent, but you both being Floridian residents at one point or another, it's crazy because it's very southern. People don't recognize that Florida is still in the south of this country, and the mentality, never mind how many presidential elections they mess up thanks to brothers being in office. Bush Jr. But, it's one of those things where it's a unique state and where there are a lot of politics. I remember some of the trials and tribulations just to bring medical into fruition where it could only be, what was it? Not hydro, it was existing horticulture producer. I think they
had to have like a 10 years experience or something like that in already owning a nursery.
So, and it was like only half a dozen licenses. It was so restrictive.
It's still very restrictive down there, but I
and the amount of money that you need also to apply for those licenses.
Yes.
That's another thing that leaves everybody out of the market. But not just here in the United States, guys. Let me tell you, Uruguay was the first country to legalize cannabis.
That was.
People cannot grow cannabis free.
Yep.
So we're still,
Well, that's crazy because
still looking for that.
You've been and you make a valid point because a lot of people don't recognize, like you said. I mean, that happened back before Colorado happened in 2013, and then everyone, got all.
And it was the whole country.
Oh my God! Yes, it was the whole country, and it was
the whole country.
Yep.
And adults use only as well. Sorry.
Yeah, and government supported and government promoted. But yeah, to your point, then everyone started paying attention when Canada came online. And I get Canada's a G7 country and blah, blah, blah. We also tease about them being the hat of the U.S. because, the 36 million people, they have less people than we do in the state of California. It's trivial. But they're the second largest landmass behind Russia. So I'll give them that.
Exactly. Yeah, and Colombia as well. Colombia is growing before Canada because Colombia never illegalized. What about that? Colombia always had in his constitution an allowed amount to carry of cannabis.
Yeah. In Colombia, exactly to your point. And then Canadians started knocking. There's LPs that are actually growers in Colombia or partnered with growers in Colombia. But I think to your point, getting back to that, I remember going down to, Expo Weed, which is the circuit that starts in Mexico. It makes its way down into South America. And I think it actually wraps in Uruguay or Paraguay. But I went to it a few years back in Chile, in Santiago, because I have some friends there in the industry. And I was really surprised with how many people do home grow in South America. I mean, here, I'm not saying Americans are lazy, but they're kind of lazy. And you go down there, I went into one mall, and it was a 3-story mall, and there were half a dozen grow shops. I'm not even kidding, like half a dozen, not head shops, hydro shops. And I started talking to friends, and they're like, yeah, we grow.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Chile never illegalized the seed.
Yep.
Chile is the fifth country that produce more hemp seeds in the world.
It's crazy.
That's part of their industry.
Yeah. And they know how to grow. And that again is not just talking to friends in Brazil and Argentina, Colombia. You're right. Like,
by the way.
Yeah.
Go Chile.
Yeah. Good football team. So they definitely, I think that's a little bit of a difference. So to your point, that you were making just now, Mia, is, quite a few of the states out of 41 technically have some level of legalization around cannabis. You're right. There is a vast amount that do not allow home grow, which only gives a nod, I think, to capitalism, which unfortunately that's kind of what we're dealing with. There's extreme capitalism with the whole big pharma conversation and prohibition, everything else. Sometimes there is too much of a good thing.
I think what we had the most in Latin America was the prohibition. The fear that your mom is going to kill you because you know how to grow, that's good. And the government is growing, that's their problem. But my kid is growing, I'm going to kill them. And a Latina mom, if you kill someone, she will help you to bury it in the garden. But
I have no doubt of that statement.
I believe
smoking marijuana, it will kick you out of the house.
Yep.
Yeah.
Like, what?
Yep. Or friends I've had, she's not Catholic, never mind. I was like, really? He's like, yeah.
Imagine if you're Catholic.
So, very true. But I think some of those social differences, and again, it's so interesting because you've definitely, oh my gosh, you've learned so much, obviously, about this country since being here and have really not just adapted, but adopted, some of the things that the country has to offer. And again, to hear how, cannabis has made such an impact for you and your family. And I think that kind of brings us back around to, so how is your son, or your son, I'm sorry, how is your daughter, is it?
Right.
Well, my son is the one who was medicated him before.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
My daughter takes CBD every day.
I'm pretty sure her daughter uses cannabis.
I know. I was like, I think we touched on both. So I guess I should ask how both on because, okay. So, definitely.
They're great.
The son. Yeah.
Good.
They're good.
Actually, my son is a total successful story because, again, that was 2013. It's almost 8 years ago. He was 16. He's now 23. He's living alone. He is working. He's, he's super functional. He's amazing, because that's another thing, like when you are under the spectrum of autism and you are functional, you don't have a place where medication, like the doctors get
prescribe,
in the middle. They will give you the same Ritalin that they will give you a kid that is not functional.
Yeah.
So I think also part of being under the spectrum is part of, you have to understand as a patient and as a mother, as a patient, where in that rainbow.
Yeah, it's a full spectrum. Yeah.
Definitely.
Or where you are going to be in my case, because again, I was diagnosed the same day that he was.
And what a day I bet that was. So you've handled it amazingly, and I'm so happy to hear that you've both found some help with this wonderful plant. That's so awesome, Danielle.
Yeah. It's a very cool story. Where do you see your future going? That's probably the last thing I would ask. Since
what are you up
the
to?
children are good, or is that what the statement is? The children are well. Yeah. The children are safe. So what is? Do you see really? Like some of us just fully embracing this and just making a career path for your future days?
Well, yeah, actually, that's what it's been going on. As a communicator, as a chef, and as an educator, and as everything that I do, I've been growing into those directions, and also helping other people and building these systems that they can be support by others in different places as well, so they can educate. So I wanted to take Cannalatino all over the world, and it's happening because unfortunately we have the pandemic and we cannot travel right now to do the conference that we used to do. But now we're doing it online, and we're having people from all over the world. We've been having incredible people from everywhere.
Yep.
I've seen some really cool guests.
Latinos in Russia, Latinos in China, Latinos in everywhere, calling us and writing and asking for help, especially in education. So that's what I would do, and I think I can live enough to educate as much as I can, and I can help the next generations to have a better path. An easier one, especially.
Absolutely. And it just starts with kind of learning some of that basic knowledge that you're always so forthcoming with. And I love that about you. You're always happy to explain things to people and to just kind of be a good ear for finding solutions when it comes to cannabis and using this plant as a medicine. So you're a real inspiration, Danielle. Keep up the amazing work. And let me know if there's another cookbook in the works. I'll come over and help you taste test some recipes.
Exactly.
It's coming. There's another one coming, but it's going to be about sexual elixirs and other things that also make us happy.
Okay. All right. Well, keep me in the loop. I definitely want to know more about that. Who couldn't use that, right? So.
In my opinion, cannabis is better than any blue pill, but I digress. So I guess let's get a couple of shots. So your book, specifically what it's called, where our listeners can find it. I know everyone's always interested in hearing more. So if you could share a little bit on that for our viewers.
Of course. It's called What I Know Plus Some Recipes. After a few months, I have it in Spanish. I have to translate it, so it's available in English and Spanish. And you can find it on Amazon right now, or on our website, cannalatino.com, www.cannalatino.com, and Canna with double N of cannabis.
Nice.
Perfect.
We can link to that, I'm sure. So.
Yes, exactly. And then, and then you obviously that's the website, and then your handles. You're pretty predominant. I caught up with you on IG. That was me that started following you last night. So where can our listeners follow you as well? And again, the fact that, from an ESL perspective, that you're probably communicating in both languages, so kind of catering to both audiences, which is phenomenal. But how can they follow you? If you can share your handles for that as well.
Yeah, of course. We are on Instagram as Cannalatino. It's very easy. We trademark the name, so because we had a great name. And actually, that's something that it came out in one night. Like I was playing, because again, it was a Facebook page where I was open, and I'm like, how am I going to call it? And I say, well, let's call it Cannalatino. And everybody loves it. So it's
catchy.
really easy to remember. It's Canna from cannabis, Latino from Latino.
There you go. There you go.
To the point. Yep, I like it.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, thank you again.
Yeah, we don't want it to complicate anything.
No,
We
you got to
wanted
keep it
make
simple.
Our life easier.
You're in communications, and in that it carries over into marketing. And what do we always say? KISS. Got to keep it simple.
Exactly.
So awesome. Very cool. Well, we will definitely keep in touch. And we, of course, always appreciate in hearing those that educate. So any way that we can further support you, definitely make sure to let us know.
Yeah, thank you so
For
much,
sure.
Danielle. It was great to have you on the show today and to catch up a little bit. And I'll let you know next time I'm in Colorado for some of those arepas.
Oh my gosh. Yes.
For a big hug, because I miss you a lot. And thank you very much for having me here. It's really a pleasure and an honor to be able to communicate in both languages. So again, I'm more than happy and honored to be here. So thank you. You have me for life. You know that.
Oh, we love hearing it. It's always good vibes. That's what we love about this industry.
Absolutely.
And having friends around the world like you, even those in our backyard. So again, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate it.
Yep. Thank you, Danielle.
Perfect.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
All righty. And so that for us, another show. That was I love hearing that because, again, having friends, and family members that have dealt with autism, and 1 out of 54 children born in this country now are diagnosed with autism. So I think that's very, very interesting and hits home for many. So
she's got so many great stories and great experience with cannabis and the community and just how to help people and be a good educator. So I'm really glad that we got to chat with her for a little bit. It was a fun conversation about all sorts of weedly things.
Exactly true. Well, thank you all. As always, we appreciate you listening in, and it's all about good vibes. Be sure to tune in next time. We'll be catching up with yet another guest, a little bit of news updates, and what me is consuming.
Fun times.
Until then, we'll catch you guys next time. Thanks much.
See ya.
You're listening to Hayes Radio Network, Cannabis Lifestyle Radio.